Very good morning to all of you. And thanks to the Asian Development Bank for inviting me to this S20 High Level Policy webinar. It's an absolute pleasure and privilege for me. Thank you so much. Now, I would like to take you through the India's commitment to the climate action, which have been there from starting from 2015. And then I'll take you through some of the key sectors which are there: the power sector, the industrial sector, the transport sector, the cooking, and the agriculture sector, wherein what all we have done, what all we can do about. That is what is I hope plan to present in the next 10 minutes or so. I think India's undertook an initiative for introducing clean technology and the clean sources of energy in the right earnest, even prior to the COP21, when the target for solar energy was increased from 20 gigawatt to 100 gigawatt, and overall RE energy capacity target was enhanced to 175 gigawatt by the year 2022. And post the Paris summit, India outlined its commitment in the form of the nationally determined contributions. And the three main contributions were in the form of achieving the 40% of the installed generation capacity from the non-fossil fuel sources by 2030, reducing the carbon intensity, emissions intensity of economy by 30 to 35% by as compared to the 2005 levels. And thirdly, expanding the carbon sink by 2.5 to 3 gigaton of CO2 through the additional forest cover. And I'm very happy to inform, and many of you might be knowing, that India is the only country amongst the G20 countries to be on track to achieve the Paris commitments. I would like to give you certain examples of the achievement of the targets of NDCs. Now, firstly, in regard to the installed generation capacity from non-fossil fuels, I think the target for 2030 is 40%, and we have already achieved about 40%, about 9 years ahead of the target year of 2030. Currently, in the year 2022, we stand the non-fossil fuel-based installed generation capacity stands at about 41% of the total installed capacity mix in the country. When we come to the electricity generation part, I think now the emissions intensity part, I would say, I think the plan was to reduce, the target was to reduce to 30 to 35%. And as of now, we have achieved a reduction of the order of 28% as compared to the pre-industrial levels. So I think we are well on track to achieve one we have already achieved, and the others we are on track to achieve. That's what is point number one. Now, the roadmap for achieving net zero carbon for India was set by our Honorable Prime Minister at Glasgow, wherein he announced that India will reach the net zero target by 2070, but the targets for 2030 are very well defined, and they define the roadmap for India to achieve the clean energy transition. I think the first target is in regard to the enhancement of the installed generation capacity or the renewable capacity. I think from 175 gigawatt to be achieved in 2022, it has been scaled up to 500 gigawatt of non-fossil fuel-based capacity by 2030. Secondly, I think the 50% of energy in 2030 should come from the renewable energy sources. Thirdly, I think India has to reduce the projected carbon emissions by 1 billion ton. And fourthly, the carbon intensity of economies to be reduced by 45%. So it's a significant upscaling of the targets as compared to what was announced at Paris, and the ambit of the targets has also been enhanced, and the roadmap up to 2070 is to be defined, and various actions are being taken by various entities. Today, we stand at about non-fossil fuel-based capacities approximately 163 gigawatt, and when we have to move to 500 gigawatt, this is an ambitious target. The scale is certainly ambitious and challenging, but various actions are being taken, and the pathways are being discussed and formed up. If we talk about the electricity generation, 50% has to come by 2030 from the renewable energy sources. I think when in the 2015, the 20% came from the non-fossil sources. Now, today in 2022, it has increased from 20% to 25%, and the studies have been done up to 2030. by various agencies, including TERI. And our studies for 2030 show that non-fossil energy contribution could be of the order of 55 to 56% by 2030. So I think we are on track to achieve the 50% contribution, at least from the power sector, in the energy mix this time. So these are the sort of the targets which have been defined in terms of the NDCs, and what is the achievement so far and what can be done. What can be done is to be firmed up in the coming days. Now, insofar as technologies are concerned, in the renewable energy, we have gone largely on solar and wind, but in the solar, the ground-mounted solar and the rooftop solar are there. The ground-mounted solar has picked up, but the opportunities are there in the solar rooftop, which need to be scaled up quite significantly. Now, on the wind side, I think onshore wind progress has been pretty satisfactory, but offshore wind is a sector wherein, and the floating solar is another area where I think the India would like to take the further steps and define the roadmap. How do we reach there? Another area in the power sector which has been significantly sort of can be remarked about is the new environmental norms for the thermal power stations were formulated in the year 2015, and the norms for CO2 were made more stringent, and the new norms were introduced for SOx, NOx, and mercury, as well as water consumption. I think the various power stations are doing their best to comply with these norms. Now, if I try to come on to the another aspect of the clean energy transition, apart from the moving from the fossil fuel-based capacity to non-fossil fuel-based capacity or the renewable energy, the another pillar one can talk about is energy efficiency or the energy conservation. And in the industrial sector, I would talk about I think there is a scheme called Perform, Achieve, and Trade scheme, which is there designed to achieve the required energy efficiency in the energy intensive sectors. The energy consumption norms have been set up for these, and they are set up by our agency called Bureau of Energy Efficiency. And these designated industries are called as designated consumers. And this is a market-based compliance mechanism which is aimed to accelerate the improvement in energy efficiency in these sectors. And the energy savings which are achieved by the notified industries, they are converted into energy savings certificates, and they are called e-certs, and they are, after they are issued, they are traded at the power exchanges. I'll just give you an example. This the Perform, Achieve, and Trade, which we have abbreviated as PAT. The first cycle was started in the year 2012, and it was a 3-year cycle. The target for achievement was the reduction is the secondary specific energy consumption was of the order of about 6.6 million ton of oil equivalent. And the actual achievement was 30% more than the target. The achievement was about 8.67 million ton of oil equivalent, million ton of oil equivalent. So far, a number of cycles have been done, and totally the 6 PAT cycles have been done till March of 2020, which I have the data readily, and a total of 1,073 designated consumers covering 13 sectors have rolled out these schemes, and it is projected that the total savings from these is of the order of 26 million ton of oil equivalent. They translate into avoiding about 70 million ton of CO2 by March 2023. So that is what is about the industry sector. We move on to the transport sector, which is another major contributor. About 18% of total energy consumption in India comes from the transport sector, and it translates into approximately 94 million ton of oil equivalent by the transport sector. Now, I think the electric mobility is being given a great push and thrust in India, and the innovative pricing solutions, appropriate technology, and the infrastructure is being aimed at. The most important the considerations in the electric mobility are the cost, the range anxiety, and the EV charging infrastructure. And the government of India is taking initiatives for all of these. And the Ministry of Power, the Union Ministry of Power, has issued charging infrastructure guidelines for the electric vehicles. There is a national policy also, which has been announced for a number of promotional measures over the last 10 years. It will be difficult for me to cover all of them in the short time available, but faster adoption and manufacturing of hybrid and electric vehicles, the phase 1 and phase 2 has been there, which gives a push to the electric mobility in the country. Along with along with this, integral part is the phased manufacturing program to give a boost to the electric mobility, domestic manufacturing in the country, and there is a national mission on transportive mobility and storage also. And the roles and responsibilities of various organizations are clearly defined in that regard. Another area of interest in India is about the hydrogen, and the Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi, announced the National Hydrogen Mission in August 2021. The mission aims to aid in meeting the climate targets and make India a green hydrogen hub. And their target is to produce by 5 million tons of green hydrogen per annum by the year 2030. So this is a promising area. I think right now the cost effectiveness is in question, but I think as the scales which are there in India, they will certainly bring the cost to the reasonable levels. Cooking is another area wherein we have shifted from the traditional biomass cooking, etc., firewood cooking, etc., to the clean cooking sources like LPG, and the Ujjwala Yojana in this regard is well known, and one can take pride in that about 93 million connections have been released in this till about June 2020. In the agricultural sector, there is a scheme for solarization of standalone agriculture pumps. The target is to solarize about 1.75 million pumps, and also there is a solarization of grid connected individual pump capacity up to 7.5 HP is also there. So I think installation and the solarization of grid connected pumps, both the components are there, which will help essentially to move away from the sort of a non-clean sources to the cleaner sources of energy and reduce the air pollution. So the opportunities exist in all the areas, in the power sector, in the transport sector, in the industrial sector to move forward. The new technologies, the cost reductions particularly are important for the developing countries like India. So with this, I would like to rest my initial impressions and would be happy to take on the questions.
Thank you, Mr. Saxena. That was a great